start thinking about racism as a religion?
When I made the 9 areas of activity, when I listed those, and the 7th area was religion, and then naturally I had to get into defining what religion is, strong belief backed up by action, and just by that process stumble into it. Because then I had to ask myself, okay, well, what is the strongest religion? What's the most prominent religion on the planet, if you go by that definition? Strong belief backed up by action that may or may not have a God that is at its head, in which case the religion of the white supremacists is white supremacy, and the God of that religion of the white supremacists themselves, according to the evidence. So that's how I came into it. It just evolved just by me seeking to follow the logic. Compensatory logic. I mean, that's how you raise the question. See, it starts with a question. Everything starts with a question. What is a religion? Okay, there are many, many religions throughout the planet. Now, of all the religions, what is the strongest one? And that's what I came up with. So I decided to put it in capital letters, the religion of white supremacy. And there's a statement, with several elements, I think. Now the question is raised, how did that evolve in my mind? And also there was a white man, I think he's from Alabama, back in the 1960s, and he said, people just ought to stop, having all these arguments and falling out about this thing about race. He said, it ain't nothing really complicated about it. People would just stop getting all emotional about it and just be sensible. And then he followed that up with a statement that I think it kind of influenced me going in the direction of that religion thing. He said, it works like this. Say, God made the white man to serve God. And then he made the nigger to serve the white man. Now, if everybody just leave that alone, everything will work out fine. That's God's will. God made the white man to serve God. And then he made the nigger to serve the white man. Now, what's the problem?
You don't concede when there's theft involved. Now it is up to Congress to confront this egregious assault on our democracy. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you, to the Capitol.
He told all of us to be out there, and everyone was just listening. And we all know with Trump supporters, I mean, they admire this man. This man he's their savior, essentially, other than, our Lord Jesus Christ.
Because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
January 6th, it was soccer moms, it was vets, it was truck drivers, it was America. It was America. I believe that Donald Trump was anointed by God. I felt like it was very important to go, stand in support of our president. USA! 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 While we were up there, I could see where there were people that were clashing, and I hated to see it. And I also saw thousands of peaceful patriots standing around me.
1776, we've been screaming, we've been fighting, but now I want you to pray with me.
I turned away from the Capitol to thousands of people that were below that were coming up, and I got their attention, and I was able to pray with them, that God will hear our prayer and heal our land.
A self-described prophet has been touring swing states and recruiting believers to serve as volunteer poll workers and watchers. He helped mobilize Christians to gather in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. One sign this community is important to the Trump campaign, vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance stopped by. NPR's Lisa Hagen reports from Pennsylvania.
Come on, let's wake in our praise today. Oh, come on, my soul.
The Courage Tour's latest stop was in Monroeville, just outside Pittsburgh.
This isn't a political rally, certainly. It's much different than a revival meeting.
That's the tour's lead organizer, an evangelical media figure named Lance Wallnau. Here he is with his wife speaking in tongues over one of the tour's guitarists.
You have the ability to praise the Lord.
The Wallnaus are just two of several charismatic Christian leaders hosting these revival-style events where Trump is prophesied as God's anointed candidate, according to Matthew Taylor.
Today, President-elect Trump will be sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. His re-election to the presidency is one of the greatest comeback stories in America's political history. It is nothing short of astounding, and I am confident was supernatural, orchestrated by God. Though Satan and Trump's enemies have tried to stop God's purposes, they have and will continue to fail.
The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
Now, I'm so glad that I found Jim Jones in time. I'm so glad I found Jim Jones in time. I'm so glad that I found Jim Jones in time. Oh my God, what shall I do? I'm so glad trouble don't last always.
Got the kiss of Jim Jones on the broadcast. Feel even better about that once I got to the end of the book. Any hoodles. Gus T. Renegade, worthless Negro from Virginia, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy racism. This broadcast intended for non-white people, victims of white supremacy, individuals classified as white, do not need to listen to the cows to replace white supremacy with justice or to better grasp what racism is, how it works. Come on. Today's date, Monday, July 28, 2025. So I have been told. We will be here tomorrow, white people willing, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. California wildfires and their impact on black people, like with Octavia Butler. Can't wait. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Can I say it one more time? One more time. Reading is more important than watching television. Gus T., my personal counter-racist suggestion, since white people have invested so much time, deliberate, willful energy to make sure that black people do not read, and that's all over the world, to make sure that we don't read, and then read some more, and read nonfiction. I've been saying, every non-white person victim of racism, you should read one nonfiction book that was published the current calendar year, at least one every year. That way you can be more current about things that are being published. There's so many books that are published about racism and all kinds of subject matters. Hey, grab one. Published 2025, nonfiction. I'm going to read at least one. Done my part. We've read several at this point, but today we will add another to the list. New, brand new, off the press publications that have lots of great information. Today's broadcast, one of the subject matters we have talked about quite a bit, the religion of white supremacy. And I know for myself and many others, maybe we don't think about racism in that manner, but maybe we should. Maybe we should. Some of the broadcasts where this has come up before, you heard at the very beginning, Neely Fuller Jr., the religion of white supremacy. He discussed that, talked about having that concept in his book, even how he arrived at that way of thinking. Our guest earlier this year, the book, The Violent Take It by Force. Matthew Taylor, and very much in line with the subject matter that we're talking about today. And then we had Dr. Mickey Burdick. Matthew Taylor, white man. Dr. Mickey Burdick, white woman. We talked about her research, her dissertation specifically, spectacular surveillance, gender, white Christian nationalism, and evangelical women in the pro-life movement. The role of white women and the religion of white supremacy. Very relevant for our broadcast today, but wow. I was super excited for our broadcast today as well. Hopefully this will mean we'll have a solid week of constructive broadcasting. Our guest for today, she's visited with us. This is her third time around. Seems like we go about once a year, always with something really important. The very first time that we heard from her, this was in the middle of our study of the Columbine school shooting, and I pointed out then, she's like one of the only, it might be a few, but I mean really, if you pulled me to the carpet, might just be her. She and her co-author for the book, 20 Years of School-Based Mass Shootings in the United States, Columbine to Santa Fe, where she makes such a critical point, even related to our subject matter for today, that, hey, when we get to talking about these shootings, Columbine, Sandy Hook, even add some of the newer ones that have taken place in Tennessee, where they had Colt, Colin down in Georgia, where they got because some of these more recent cases where they've got the parents have been arrested. I said my little fella Colt 45 because they arrested his father too. Then up in Wisconsin, Natalie Ruppnow, that's another one where her father is facing charges as well for allowing her access to some of these weapons. Nikita Kasip killed his parents. Now, he didn't do the school shooting. He just didn't get that far, but he had planned to assassinate the president. Wanted to start a race war. What's the common thread? They're all classified as white. I can't even say they're all white dudes because I did say Natalie Ruppnow. So they're not all white dudes, but they're all classified as white. Bang, bang. She pointed that out in this book as being super important. These school shootings, it's white children doing this. Reb, vodka, such an important book. Even the cover art that she has for the book, she and her co-author learned so much. You should definitely read that book. Get your highlighter. Anyway, so the last time around, we had her as a guest on the program. Beginning of last year, election season, she teased us. She said, look at here, Gus, working on brand new book. And she told us the subject matter, Religion of White Supremacy. I said, oh, man, wow. That'll be great. So finally, about a year later, drops me a message while I'm doing my Wisconsin. The Wisconsin even comes up in the book, but she drops me a message. The book is out. Cannot believe it. Always love that when you get the tease and then people put in the work in. Pow. The brand new book, White Christian Nationalism in the United States, A Rising Tide Sinks All Boats. The Religion of White Supremacy. We will get to it. Always a pleasure to have her as a guest on our broadcast. Told her I think she easily is our favorite scholar grandmother out of our 16 years of broadcasting. Joining us for the third time around, our guest, Dr. Angelyn Spaulding Flowers. Dr. Flowers, you are with us again?
Hi, I'm glad to be back.
We are delighted to hear from you again. Congratulations on the new book, and thanks for hanging out, spending a little bit of your Monday summer evening with us. I guess for listeners who might, maybe they missed out, newer listeners maybe, this is their first time hearing from you. You can give us kind of a brief intro, who you are, and the really important work that you do.
So I am chairperson of the Division of Social and Behavioral Sciences at the University of the District of Columbia, which is the District of Columbia's only public institution. It's the only urban land-grant institution, and it is an HBCU. And so I'm a computational social scientist, so I research crime, terrorism, social disorder, and social disruption. But I have long had an interest in far-right extremism, primarily because I thought it got overlooked a lot for obvious reasons. Now, that is my brief introduction.
All right. Spectacular. Thank you so much. I guess just based on the intro that you shared, and one for people who have not seen you, I think I already said, well, just in case, you are classified as a black female. Is that correct, Dr. Flowers?
Yes, I am.
Right on. From your introduction, you shared that, one, I didn't know that you were at an HBCU, so I did learn something. But two, you shared that your profession, a computational social scientist. Wow. That's just, if you could, I guess I have two questions on that. I'll go one at a time. Number one, if you could kind of detail it for those of us ignorant folks, lay people they call it, not as much education as yourself. As if you were talking to your grandchild, what is a computational social scientist?
So basically, all it means is that I like to study social phenomena, but typically using like computer-based models and simulations.
Fascinating. Wow. Okay. I think I would have got that if I was 6 or 7. I think I would have still got that. Okay. When you did your training and went to school for that, how many of your classmates in computational social sciences, how many of your classmates were classified as black?
So computational social sciences, when I started doing it, you actually didn't get trained in it, you trained yourself. And I would say of the people that I know who do it, I'm the only black person. Now, that doesn't mean they're not more out there, and they're probably, especially among younger people, like in the PhD pipeline, there are probably some. But at the time I started, you want to keep in mind that computers and computer simulations and computer modeling was actually a new thing. And people like to apply it to what we call the hard sciences, like physics and chemistry. But applying it to study the social sciences took a while to catch on.
Fascinating. So she did concede amongst younger folks. There are probably some young black people coming through PhD programs and such in the computational social science field. But at least when she was coming along, one of one. That's the same thing I said about the Columbine research, unfortunately. Anyway, I guess before we get to the book, it's such a critical update to this entire conversation, since January 6th is a major component of this here work, white Christian nationalism in the United States. Let's get it out front right now, because I think it would, I don't know, it would, at least to me, it would seem it would drastically alter maybe how this book sounds. What do you make now? We're 6 months out. Day one, Trump gets in office, and we get pardons for all the folks, Enrique Tarrio on down, who participated in January 6th. How does that impact what you told us in this book?
I was not surprised. And the thing that I found really troubling about his whole new tenure to date is some of the things that I really was hoping I was being alarmist about, I actually see unfolding. So it's actually very worrisome. But I just want to point out that when Adolf Hitler came to power, the first thing he did was pardon all of the people who had been arrested years earlier when he first attempted the armed takeover of the government. Not that I'm making a comparison.
Being slick. I think many would say Dr. Flowers is making a comparison, and I've heard a number of people classified as white grouse over the years about comparing Trump to Hitler, and that, man, if we had done that when Obama was in the White House, you all would have called us all kinds of names and racists, and that is, that's absurd, and that's not even correct politics. You can disagree with someone's policies without comparing him to Adolf. Have you heard those sort of criticisms before, Dr. Flowers?
I have.
Okay.
And while some people might like to pretend facts don't exist and aren't real, facts are facts. And if the facts align, they align.
Facts are facts. Love that one. That's kind of one that you get out a little later in the book. We'll pick that one up as we go, but that is very important. I'll even say, for one, I do not use the term. It's very popular in these. I'm in Seattle, but it's very popular out west here. You're on the opposite side of the continent, but they say your truth. Now, if we were talking about what's your favorite dessert, what's your favorite ice cream, what bathing suit do you look best in? Oh yeah, that's subjective, no problem. But there are some things, there are facts. In Seattle right now, it is 80 degrees. That is not subjective. We can go out and verify. That is not my truth. That's not, I'm saying it's warm, cold. It's 80 degrees Fahrenheit. 2 times 2 is 4. That is not my truth. These are facts. And that is very important in my view. That is massively critical. I view it as so critical. I loathe and never use the term my truth because, as she just stated, Dr. Flowers, hey, some things are facts. These are not opinions, and that is important. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that, Dr. Flowers?
Well, actually, I agree with you. And I think one of the things that's happening is people are meshing fact and opinion. And so people are presenting opinions as if they're facts. For instance, it's an opinion that vaccines don't work. That's not a fact. That's an opinion. You can argue about how many people were at the man's inauguration. But there were only a certain number of people there. That's a fact. You can argue about whether it was a large group or a small group, but the actual number of people, you can't change. And one of the things that contributes to what we're seeing now is the way that people in government have even gotten, okay, some people in government have gotten very comfortable with presenting opinion as fact and trying to convince people that their opinion is fact. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm going to say it's their opinion. Now, when they talk about the big, beautiful bill that cuts student financial aid, it cuts, health care for poor people, it basically enriches the few at the top at the expense of the people at the bottom. Those are facts. Saying that's a good thing is an opinion. But one of the things I talked about in the book is how that approach to, I'll just say that approach to reality, for lack of a better word, has not only led to increased radicalization, but it's led to an increased distrust of information. Because there's so much information out there, there are no longer any verified standard sources as far as people are concerned. And so it teaches people to distrust the information they're given, which then plays into the hands of those who are basically trying to undermine a democracy and create a totalitarian or an authoritarian government.
You reference, I'll just bring it up now, but you reference all this later on in the text. This is towards the end of the chapter, Social Media as Extremist Incubator. You write, this is from a quote from Timothy Snyder. He wrote in a different book called On Tyranny. And his lesson 10 is believe in truth. His quote, to abandon facts is to abandon freedom. If nothing is true, then no one can criticize power because there is no basis upon which to do so. If nothing is true, then all is spectacle. The biggest wallet pays for the most blinding lights. White, and this is end of quote, Dr. Flowers' words, white Christian nationalism thrives in our digital world where social media can amplify, distract, and spread disinformation that's willfully trying to confound people. As Snyder made clear, when we abandon facts, we abandon freedom. Page 119, the book we're chatting about today, White Christian Nationalism in the United States, A Rising Tide Sinks All Boats. Who was your intended audience for this here book published just this year, Dr. Flowers?
Well, my intended audience was actually all of those people who appear to be victimized by white Christian nationalism. Black people, Latino people, the LGBTQ+ community, women. I wanted to basically kind of alert them, this is what's happening. I'm pulling it all together to show how all these different little small things that are impacting different groups, they're all connected and they have a common agenda. So, yeah, I was really targeting it towards the ones that they're trying to erase. They're trying to erase us, basically.
That's interesting. Wow. I don't often hear people who say that they like. We talk to a lot of people who teach at universities, like yourself, and other institutions, and so they publish books for academic reasons, right? To get tenure, you have to publish, or even just to remain employed. Sometimes you have to publish. So it's rare to hear people who say, "Well, I wrote this book for victims of racism." Non-white people, you gave your other groups, but I wrote this for these victims so they can better understand what is happening around them. And even Dr. Welsing, she used to say, connect the dots. Connect the dots. They can place all of these current happenings into a context so they can see all of these things are related. Like that's, I don't know. Did you get any pushback or folks saying, you should not engage in such a project, or, what was the feedback when you shared that was what you wanted to do?
Oh, I just went ahead and did it.
Wow. Do you have tenure?
I got a couple of comments from the editor, but I explained why I was doing it and kept doing it the way I wanted to do it.
Do you have tenure?
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay. Wow, rowdy black scholar. Okay. What is the reasoning for the title of this book? I'll share it again for listeners who maybe they don't have it because it's so new. White Christian Nationalism in the United States, a rising tide sinks all boats. Why that title?
So the rising tide sinks all boats is kind of a play on Reaganomics. I don't know if you remember, this may have been before your time, but when Ronald Reagan first privatized government and was giving all these handouts to big businesses and wealthy, basically what he said was, if these big companies are doing well, then they will lift up everyone else. Now, we know it doesn't exactly work like that. So I was it was like the flip side of that, but also it was like imagery, because as you saw on the book cover, it's like waves and a storm and a ship. But if you think of the waves as different isms like racism and anti-Semitism and misogyny and all of sexism, all of those things, that will sink the ship that is the United States of America.
Fascinating. I do remember good old Mr. Reagan. I'm not that scholarly, don't have all of that background information, but yes, we do remember. Just say no. Just say no.
Yeah.
What I thought was one of the crucial components that you put out right at the very beginning of the book, and we've heard this from so many different scholars, and I must emphasize from all over the world. We've heard this from people, not just in the United States, in terms of the demographic shift, as they say. You write, this is in the preface, so book hasn't even really begun officially. You write, there is a demographic imperative at work that propels their efforts, white Christian nationalists. The white population is in decline. A study of U.S. Census data by William Frey with the Brookings Institute found that in the second decade of this century, the white population declined in each and every state. The decline was attributable to three major factors: an increase in white deaths, an older white demographic, meaning there are fewer white women of childbearing age, in conjunction with a decline in births by those white women who were of childbearing age. With an aging white population, the decline is expected to continue. This decline in the white population is juxtaposed against increased numbers among racial and ethnic minority populations, particularly those under the age of 25. In 2019, more than half of those under the age of 16 identified as racial or ethnic minorities. As these young people age and have children, the decline of the white population is expected to accelerate. The bedrock foundation of white Christian nationalism is that the United States of America was founded as a white Christian nation and is meant to remain that way in perpetuity. We can see in these demographic trends the drivers behind many of the actions of white Christian nationalists. As the number of white people declines, it becomes critical to consolidate white political power, increase the number of white babies being born, decrease immigration of non-white people, and take similar actions. Very important. As I said, this is in the preface, so the book hasn't even really got started official at this point. Why did you, and I think that is foundation, you return to this point so many times. I agree. I also think this is super important, pivotal, motivating factor. Why did you lay this out at the very beginning for your readers?
Because I think it's important. I wanted to put out there for them that this isn't happening in a vacuum. They didn't just wake up and decide, oh, you know what? We want the United States to be a white Christian nation because we just think that would be great and we want power. That they actually see the power falling away from themselves. They're losing it. And more importantly, I mean, they have long felt that they like to be the victim. Victimization is how they perpetuate racism. You know, they tell unemployed factory workers, you're laid off because of affirmative action. We had to hire black people. When instead, those white factory workers were laid off because the company found it was cheaper to build a factory someplace else where they only had to pay $1 a day in wages. But now it's an actual decline in that they're losing numbers. And imagine what a nightmare it is if you believe that this is your country because you're white and because God gave it to you. But everywhere you look, you see brown people. That's a nightmare. And you have to rectify that nightmare. And so I thought it was important to put that out there at the beginning, because even though they won't necessarily say that, that is really what kind of underlies a lot of this. Their numbers are dwindling.
When you say as the number of white people declines, it becomes critical to consolidate white political power. This is another one. So you're explaining it to us like we're some of your, I guess, new grandchildren. What does consolidating white political power, what does that mean? What does that look like?
So let me take a step back to something that's not in the book, but just to put that thought in context. During slavery, in a lot of places in the South, the number of slaves outnumbered the white people. But they maintained control through a series of really draconian laws. So what they really need to recreate, they can't recreate that system, but they need to recreate a political system that they control. Because that's the only way they can take back the advantages they see people of color taking from them. So white Christian nationalists see progress as a zero-sum game. It's not a case, if you get a piece of equality, that means I have lost something, as opposed to, yeah, let's all just have a piece of the pie.
I'm processing. Zero sum. I'm going to process. I'll see if I need to come back. One term that I did make an error. I should have got an explanation for this one a little bit sooner. So big important term for the text, white Christian nationalism. And you kind of distinguish this from the typical capital C Christian or Christianity. What do you mean, Dr. Flowers, when you say when write white Christian nationalism? What is that?
So white Christian nationalism, first of all, has nothing to do with Christianity of the Bible or the Christianity of Jesus Christ. They just appropriated the name. Because if you look at the Bible and then listen to the things they say, they have nothing in common. What white Christian nationalism is kind of, it takes different threads of far-right extremism. So it pulls in white supremacy, neo-Nazis, KKK. It pulls in the anti-immigrant thrust, pulls in anti-Semitism. It pulls in misogyny, racism, and it's nationalistic in that their vision is a Eurocentric nation. In other words, a white nation. And then, so they take nationalism and white nationalism and all those other things, and then they wrap it up in Christianity. So basically they can say, God told us this. God gave us this. It's ordained. You can't argue with it. So what we're talking about really when we say white Christian nationalism is we're talking about a theocratic white ethno-state. So a white society that is a theocracy, that is run on religious principles. And not just, but a very narrow set of religious principles.
And two questions from that one. Are non-white people, are we supposed to be eradicated? Are we supposed to be slaves? Or what is our role in all of this, as is your understanding?
So they haven't quite figured out what, I think they haven't quite figured out what to do with it. They are trying to erase us. So for instance, white Christian nationalist version of U.S. history does not include contributions of any non-white people. So that's why they want to eradicate the museums, some of the Smithsonian museums. They have been pulling books by and about black people from the U.S. Park Service bookshops. I mean, not to mention the school book bans. They know they need us here because somebody has to pick the crops after they illegally deport all the immigrants. Somebody has to clean the hotels. Somebody has to provide the services that make their life better. But what we're talking about is power. White Christian nationalism, most people who have studied it say this is not about religion, this is about power. And it's about a small group of people who basically jumped on the evangelical movement and used this as a way to get power for themselves. We're talking political power. And so as long as they have the power, then everybody else is almost like a little drone. We're there to perform a function. But, not that I want to, but I did hear our president one day when he was busy boasting about how he was deporting immigrants to El Salvador prison. And then he said, And, you know, next we'll send U.S. citizens there. Now, we know he wasn't talking about U.S. citizens. But now they're building these detention camps throughout the United States.
Well, act up is... I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Flowers.
No, I was just going to say, you know, the Supreme Court tossed out vagrancy laws back in the 60s. But, you know, vagrancy laws were used to lock up black people, particularly in the South, send them to prison so they could be hired out to white farmers to do farm work. That's not so far removed. And the 13th Amendment abolished slavery entirely. Only abolished it except as punishment for a crime.
Context of White Supremacy. Douglas Blackman, what have we been doing for our 16 years of broadcasting? Well, before we got to Dr. Flowers, we were late bloomers there, but we got to Douglas Blackman very early, 2010, Slavery by Another Name. Matter of fact, one of the same states that is prominently featured in Dr. Flowers' new book, Georgia, is prominent. That's the big state for Douglas Blackman's book. And then convict leasing. Get old, shiftless, privileged black dudes and get out there and get in that mine and do it. Come on. As she said, not because you raped a white woman, not because you were smuggling crack cocaine, not at that time period anyway, but just because white people won't give you a job or a place to stay, so you're a vagrant. So, woo, man.
You just stand in those street corners.
They did just report President Trump was making changes to laws about homeless people, homeless encampments, and being able to clear them out. Hey, maybe those are some of the folks that he's talking about. Hey, might be getting on out of here. Beat it. Go ahead and round them up too.
And think about the amount of government federal money that's going to take private companies to house all of these people.
Jobs for somebody. When we heard about some of that, they were talking about putting some of these private facilities, like you're mentioning, in Louisiana, and they were talking about putting them in really rural parts of the state, like not New Orleans and Baton Rouge, but like northern Louisiana, where places with population of like 4,000 people, 3,000 people, things like that. You're like, wow, that's a whole welfare program for them, because there's no resources or anything else there, so we'll just put a detention camp for non-white people. That, hey, now we got jobs for everybody. You just come work at the detention camp. you got a good federal job too. So
you get vested and it stays there. But that's actually what they did with the private prisons. They put a lot of those in rural places that didn't have a lot of jobs, and then they had jobs for people. Those private.
Fascinating. Make sure I didn't interrupt her there. I had one more quick question about the ethno-state before I move to some of the further chapters in the text. With this white ethno-state, and I'm in Seattle, Washington. Okay, so Washington State does not have a lot of black people. The whole Pacific Northwest, places like Oregon, Idaho, Montana, places like that, they don't have a lot of black people out here. Anyway, matter of fact, in a lot of the literature and such, they'll talk about places like here, the Pacific Northwest. This should be the white ethno-state, like, maybe we just boot all the black, since it's not that many black people here to begin with, boot them all out, and I guess they figure out what to do with the other non-white people, and hey, we have a great chunk of territory and we'll just hang out right here. I hear that sort of thing. And I mean, hey, Oregon, they almost got it. I think it's still in the Oregon State Constitution. No Negras. Never been changed. When I hear that sort of thing, if people classified as white, especially really powerful white people, if they really wanted a so-called ethno-state, they could do that. And I mean, it would be, whew, you want to talk about luxurious, opulent. They got Jeff Epstein and them, they could get together and do it up and make sure as many sundown towns as white people brag about having all over the world, not just here, they could do that easily. And we don't never have to be around no Negras, beat it, or no non-white people, period. I think white people are lying when they talk about this, because I mean, hey, the ethno-state, if they really, really wanted that, we would have never had slavery. I don't think the Negras came out to Europe and such and got on white people's nerves and you should have stayed where you were. I don't think, I mean, I think you talk about lies. I think the white ethno-state, that is a gargantuan lie. What do you think, Dr. Flowers?
You figure somebody's going to have to do the work. And they plan on doing it. But I actually think that you see this in two different ways. One is what you're talking about with the opulent luxury area, and yeah, they're going to need some workers. But then what's also happening is you have these people, kind of resemble survivalists, and they're buying up huge trunks of land for white people to live on. And these are the people who, they build their own homes, and so maybe they don't need workers. But I don't think everybody plans to be doing that. With the trad wives, who rent out cows to get the milk, to churn into butter for breakfast, while taking care of 10 children simultaneously.
Facts. I think the young people still say that one. Facts. I don't know how many white people are jumping up and down saying, yeah, and even all that border control. So, hey, we're not going to have Gomez and Pedro. They're not going to be here to pick all the strawberries and, lettuce, tomato. You have to either grow our own food or go out and pick it yourself or, whatever that means. Like, really?
Places, yeah, they got crops rotting on the vine because there's nobody to pick them. But that's okay. The president has an idea for that. Remember, he talked about, well, maybe, what did he say, for the good immigrant workers, there'd be a program where the farm owners would be responsible for them. What does this sound like? This sounds kind of like slavery, right?
You get a pass. They write it. This is a good brown worker. Yeah, that's what they should put on it too. Good brown. I'm sorry, because that is not funny at all. This is not funny. I should not be laughing. You have to laugh to keep from crying on some of it, because
you do have to laugh to keep from crying. Because it's just. Oh, goodness.
Whew. I was thinking the same thing that Dr. Flowers said, though, that does sound so plantational. Like we'll have the good brown workers and the white farmers will be responsible. Like, whoo. Anyway, we got the ethno-state. I love the commentary on that as well. That's what I've been processing the whole time. Moving forward, where you talk about, this is getting into some of the actual chapters of the text. This is, give out the correct, so this is emerging from the shadows. You write, there's an overlap in targets with hate crimes and the terrorist attacks to be discussed in this book. Unlike a terrorist attack, a hate crime does not involve a political, economic, religious, or social goal. And while the violence of a hate crime can spark fear or feelings of coercion or intimidation in the victim, it does not involve an intention to coerce, intimidate, or convey a message to a larger audience than the immediate victim. Despite these differences, we are taking a moment to look at hate crimes because their prevalence contributes to the spread of white Christian nationalism. Thought that was important as well in just making a distinction. Dr. Flowers spends a lot of time, being precise with her terms in the book. I certainly appreciate that. And I was reading that, so with individual hate crime incidents, individual incidents of a hate crime, I'll take the James Byrd Jr. It seems like so many incidents that I could select, but I'll take James Byrd Jr., a black male who was dragged behind a truck in Jasper, Texas, alcohol, white. These are his white friends even. But they dragged him to death behind the truck, dumped his body in a black cemetery, and urinated on his remains, unless I'm misinformed. That's one of the crimes that led to the hate crimes bill under Bill Clinton. That was a singular hate crime against a singular individual. You don't think that was intended to intimidate black people in Jasper, Texas, maybe even the U.S. in general?
It could have been, except that I figured just true voice, but they were not trying to accomplish a political purpose or a political goal. They weren't trying to, by killing this black man, they advocate for the removal of all black people from Jasper. Or by killing this black man, they're saying that we don't want black people voting. And there is actually terrorist violence associated with keeping black people from voting. This was just, and I don't want to say just to appear to minimize it, but this was a set of white people, and black lives have no value. Oh, what are we doing now? Well, let's just tie our buddy to the truck and let's see what happens. Because he's disposable. It was their utter contempt for his life that was the motivating factor.
Do you think the kind of public spectacle, and I'll call this a lynching, do you think the public spectacle of this lynching, where they're finding bits of his remains all over the road and then dumping his body in the black-only cemetery, do you think that's conveying a message of intimidation to a larger audience than the victim?
I think so, but it would be, so for instance, you look at things, okay, just also to clarify, researchers use definitions to put things in categories. So the definition of terrorism that was used is used by the database, that the Global Terrorism Database. But it's meant to intimidate, all right? It's clearly meant to intimidate, although they hid the body. So it's like they didn't want people to find the body, as opposed to they lynched him and left him hanging on the tree in the park for everyone to see.
Much about. Thank you for sharing the definition for terrorism. Like I said, I appreciate the detail with concepts and just, I'm not trying to belabor the point. It's just that so many of these individual acts, it does seems like there's a broader message intended for black people, even if it's exactly what you said, Dr. Flowers, that message of the disposability of black life, that Mr. Byrd, you didn't have to do anything, You didn't provoke us. Nothing. Like you said, hey, we didn't even have plans tonight. What are we doing? Let's get him over here and see what happens, type of a thing. And even that can be any black person, and it's nothing you can do about it. Like, I do even think frequently that is a part of white violence. That is a part of white power. That we can behave with impunity with regards to black people. I'm sorry. You had something? Go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you. I think you're exactly right about it. It is a demonstration of their power. And that's one of the reasons why I did take some time to look at what was happening with hate crimes, because I don't think that the terrorist acts and the other behaviors happen in a vacuum. I think that hate crimes kind of form the backdrop. The fact that these crimes were being committed emboldened other people to engage in, stronger actions.
Stronger acts of violence, white supremacy, racism. And you talk about, you go into detail with some of the specific cases that have happened, 21st century cases, more recent than James Byrd Jr. I kind of picked the oldie. With a number of these more recent cases, you point out that the trend seems to be there are a lot of angry young white men in particular, but the emphasis on the young part, like under 25, where the data that you look and present in the text shows that we're looking at these incidents of violence previously. You can even think of some of the folks from previous, Timothy McVeigh and such. These folks are a little bit older. The age is coming down. Dylan Roof and Peyton Gendron and some of these folks, 18 years old, early 20s, really, really young, but they're going out and committing these acts and sometimes mass casualty events. What does that convey to you?
Well, that was one of the interesting things I noticed. So the average age of perpetrators of far-right extremism is 44. But yet for the mass casualty attacks on minorities, the Dylan Roof, the Peyton Gentry, all those people, they were young. Most of them were under 21. And so it's something about feeling that you can attack a black or a Hispanic person, that you're emboldened to do that much earlier. I guess maybe if they had kept on and aged out instead of getting killed, killing themselves, or being arrested, these would be the people who at 40 are sending mail bombs to government officials. The people engaged in the anti-government acts tended to be older than the people who were basically doing the mass murders of other people that didn't look like them.
I was fascinated by that as well, in terms of to be that young, and either I'm willing to die or go. And even with Peyton Gendron, he's may face the death penalty. That's his federal trial starting in September. With Dylan Storm Roof, and for those who may have forgotten, that's 10 years ago. It's hard to even think it's been a decade. But June 2015, he goes to the church in Charleston, South Carolina, kills 9 people. And you write about in the book, he says, why are you doing this? He's asked as he's committing this heinous crime. So, will you rape our women? And, even though he's killing lots of black females in this church, he sat next to
old people.
Yes, ma'am. He is reported to have sat next to State Senator Reverend Clementa Pinckney for approximately an hour. They were having a Bible service before he began his murderous rampage. And I pointed out for years because State Senator Pinckney, he had been on television prominently in South Carolina for at least, well, one, he's a state senator, so that's one, and the long history, even in particularly in South Carolina, they have a long history of white supremacist violence against black elected officials. They don't even have that many black elected officials. But two, he had been, or State Senator Pinckney, he had been on television within like the last 30 days before that massacre. He had been talking about Walter Scott, black privileged black male, shot and killed by the police, shot in the back while fleeing. And he had been on television speaking passionately. And I said, now I'm on the opposite side of the continent. I saw this before he passed away, him talking about all of this. If you live in South Carolina and you've been planning to do this attack, which Dylann Roof had before all of this, he had to see that. I said, man, maybe this was a political assassination. Maybe he went, and I'm going to make sure that I get State Senator Clementa Pinckney. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that, Dr. Flowers?
I'm not being... Okay, you know the saying, we all look alike. I don't know that Dylann Roof actually ever looked at a black person closely enough to be able to recognize them. All he saw was black skin. He said he picked Charleston because at one point it had the largest black population. I think he probably went to that church because it's a historical church. I don't know that he targeted him. I think he targeted black people. Because I don't think he could have recognized him. You know, the fact that he sat there for an hour with people in a prayer group kind of speaks something of his character. You're going to pray with them and then you're going to shoot them. But the other thing about Dylann Roof was he also saw himself, he identified himself as a white nationalist. Because, one, he wanted to start a race war. So he might as well go to the most famous black church in Charleston. But also, he just really wanted to get rid of black people.
Context of white supremacy. Absolutely wanted to get rid of black people. Absolutely.
The interesting thing about him, though, is that he claims to have been radicalized by George Zimmerman.
Mm-hmm.
Who murdered Trayvon Martin. That's when he became radicalized. So if some grown man killing a child,
well, I guess some might say Dr. Flowers being slick again. One, she got us earlier. She was comparing President Trump to Adolf Hitler, and now she's saying Trayvon Martin as a child. Now, you know Trayvon Martin was going on 35, and black children don't even qualify as children, so come on now. Let's see. And she talks about a number of these more recent like mass casualty events with Dylann Roof, as you said, Peyton Chandra, and some of the other killers. And you make connections. I said at the very beginning, you said you wrote this book, which is still stunning to me. You wrote this book for victims, non-white people, other victims. Hey, pay attention, place all of these events in context. So you start with the white supremacist violence in many different forms, and that comes back up, voter oppression, comes back up later in different forms in the book. Then, chapter 3, the patriarchy, in terms of connecting dots. Now, what specifically were you connecting, did you want people to understand about these specific attacks in the chapter, the patriarchy?
So, I really wanted people to understand, and particularly women. One of the things I noticed, it was a couple of years ago when I was talking to my class, students did not understand that at one point women did not have a right to access contraceptives. Now, I'm not even talking about the right to an abortion, but women did not have a constitutional right to access contraceptives until 1973 or 74. And so I wanted people to understand that these rights didn't always exist, and they're being taken away. And there are consequences to them being taken away. The ability of women to really make progression, economic strides, progression in the workforce, coincided with their ability to determine when and if they had children. The ability of black households, white households, anybody's household to move up economically was tied a lot to being able to determine when and how many children you had. And I wanted people to understand that that could very easily, and it actually is, being taken away. But also, it's not just the reproductive health aspect of it, but also there are people out there who think it's okay to murder women because they are women. So you have the whole incel phenomenon. You know, incels are they're involuntarily celibate. That's what they call themselves. They also are they're anti-Semitic. They are neo-Nazis. They promote white supremacy. One of the pushbacks I got from my publisher was he asked me how I could include incels in a book on white Christian nationalism when all incels are not white. And that is true, except when you look at the incel message board, they're filled with white supremacist symbols, neo-Nazi symbols. And the leading incels, I don't want to say the leading incels, but the ones who actually killed women, but who could be considered non-white, despise that non-white aspect of themselves. I mean, they said that. So what they valued was whiteness. So it illustrates how you can even be part of the group that's technically being oppressed, but you still ally yourself with the oppressor. And women have done that too in some respects. So, for instance, in that chapter I talked about inconsistencies. So, if you're against abortion, then it's important to remember if the state can prohibit something, they can also compel it. So if a state can say you can't have an abortion, states can also require you to have abortions. And so if you are against abortion, then you need to be against state involvement at all. And also just some of the inconsistencies, you're going to argue, well, an embryo is a person, which Alabama said. But then some of the people who argued that embryos were persons got upset when they lost their access to IVF treatments, fertility treatments, because those involve embryos. And so they make laws. So then the legislature makes laws to say, well, we didn't need IVF. But they did that because it's a particular demographic who really is predominantly involved in getting IVF treatments because they're expensive. And so remember, we need more white babies. And what happens, the other thing I was really trying to get across in that chapter is that women are going to die. Okay, women there have already been instances of women dying because the fetus they were carrying had died inside them and was poisoning them. Well, it was non-viable, but because there was a heartbeat, they could not remove it. And so basically the woman has to wait till the heartbeat stops. And in some instances, that's too late for the woman. She dies. And I know we both remember the instance of the black nurse in Georgia whose body was basically used as an incubator for months after she was dead. Remember that instance?
I do not. Dang, I got to plead ignorance on that one, Dr. Flowers. I'm still learning.
She went to the hospital. She was pregnant. She already had a 6-year-old. She went to the hospital, and like I say, she was a nurse. Black women, they have a very high mortality rate much during pregnancy and right after delivery. I mean, even educated middle and upper class black women. So she was a nurse, and something happened, and basically she was brain dead. But the hospital refused. Normally in those circumstances, they ask the family, well, do you want us to pull the plug because she's brain dead? The hospital would not give the family the choice. They said, well, that she was like 6 months pregnant or something, or 4 months pregnant. Well, we have basically the fetus is still there, so we have to just keep her on life support, even though she's brain dead. And like I said, the family never got to make a decision. This is using a black woman's body basically as an incubator. Her partner, as the months went on, because she was there for months in this condition, he said that you could see her body deteriorating before your eyes. But they're going to keep her hooked up because she's gestating. Yeah, and that sparked a lot of outrage, particularly among women of color, because it made us feel as if, you're viewed as an oven. That was pretty horrific. Now, there are instances when families have made the choice to do that. But her family was never given that, they were never asked. The choice, the right to make that choice was taken away from them because of a very restrictive state law on abortion. And there have been instances of women basically going to hospitals. Fetus is non-viable, but there's a heartbeat. So they say, well, you need to be sicker before we can do anything. Go sit in the parking lot, and when you start bleeding out, come back in. The reason those states are using OBGYNs.
Wow. Barbaric. I want to make sure I get her name. I'm still learning. Thank you for this. Is why we got Dr. Angelyn Spaulding Flowers back with us for the third time. So I can. Oh, it's Adriana Smith. I got you. Adriana Smith. You've been working on so much. 31-year-old. This is from ABC News. Adriana Smith, 31-year-old Georgia nurse and mother, was just 8 weeks pregnant when she was declared brain dead in February of this year after suffering a medical condition. The family claims the hospital told them legally she had to be kept on life support to allow the fetus to grow. Hope people caught that. This is our favorite state one more time. Georgia again. And this even, it was 2 points that were so important to me. I'll get back to Elliot Rodgers, but the right here, it crystallizes it for me where you say, hey, they didn't even give her family the option. Shut up. I don't care. Yeah. Get out of here. And the fetus at such a young age, 8 weeks, and it's, you don't have any input on this decision at all. Get on out of here. You should be lucky if we allow you to view the body and or the fetus that, would be a part of your family too. For that to be the experience for black females, and that sounds right out of the book, Killing the Black Body. Dorothy Roberts, guest on our program repeatedly, which he's also talked about for years, and reproductive attacks on black females specifically. If that's going to be the birth experience for black mommies, non-white mommies, while for white mothers, hey, wait a minute, don't mess over our IVF treatments, because that is not, we talked about that with Dorothy Roberts, that is in vitro fertilization, that is not for black females. That's not for brown females. We're going to figure out how to get you sterilized. Make sure you don't have no children. Zero. Like none. See if we can get some more contraceptives and what have you. No babies for you. White feel, whoa. If it's $10,000, we'll figure out a way to, make sure that you have coverage and insurance. And they even have studies that have shown the facilities for the IVF treatments generally are located where you would expect. Where are the white females? That's where they're going to be. And that's where even me, and people will say I'm a patriarchal, sexist, toxic black male. All right. I push back majorly because white women are not treated like black females. Like, it's not even close. Like, in no area of people activity. Like, it is so wildly disparate. Like, when we start talking about like sexism and patriarchy, like, wait a minute. In fact, I think frequently white women are lying, and maybe everybody that's talking about sexism, you're taking data about victims of racism, non-white females who are mistreated because they are not white, and sliding that over with white women to say, oh man, we got all this sexism and white women got it bad. They can't get a job, and oh man, they can't get the medical treatment. Hogwash. That's what I'm making.
Actually, there was a study that showed that the biggest beneficiary of affirmative action has been white women.
Time magazine. That's something we've had to bring up a lot on this program over the years, even sometimes with non-white people and others arguing that ain't so. But yes, we brought that up. So that's what I mean. Like, it's very hard for me to, anything that even sounds like, are we saying that white women are victims? Like, white women are subservient and dominated? Like, by whom? I can't even get on the incel bandwagon, because you brought up one of my favorites of all time, Dr. Flowers. Elliot Rodger. Oh my goodness. We talked about that case for days and days and days and days. Wrote about, man, woo, for people who do not remember 2014 California, he has one white parent, one non-white parent, which I think is massively, massively, massively important. Obama even, it was during the Obama years. I do not think he could pass as white, and he wrote that long manifesto. You talk about it in the book, where he wrote and talked about the fact that he didn't seem like he was accepted as white. And you seem like you wrote and thought that that contributed to his murderous rampage and why he had all this difficulty with females. Do you think, Dr. Flowers?
I think he had difficulty with females probably because maybe he didn't know how to talk to them. Okay, clearly everybody who goes around killing people has some challenges. But I would say it's more, I mean, one of the things that comes across all these incels, entitlement. They believe that they are entitled to women's attention. And the fact that women are not giving them the attention they want, clearly means the women have to be punished. I mean, George Sodani, he wrote something, I don't know, it looked like it's been 20 years since he'd had sex, and I'm thinking, who keeps track of that? And he figured there were 30 million women out there who had rejected him. Now, it's impossible for him to have met all those women. So, the point I'm making is that I think some of them, their perceptions of reality were not necessarily what they should have been. But Elliot Rodger thought he was God. He thought he was a God. And that women needed to be punished for rejecting his godliness. His mother was Asian.
Mm-hmm, right. And he I'll read the portion. This is in the same chapter we've been discussing. The patriarchy. This is specifically at the kind of bottom of 55. You write, future murderers adhering to incel extremist ideologies would pay homage to Elliot Rodger. One of those was Christopher Harper Mercer, age 26, who, armed with 6 handguns, killed 9 and injured 7 others after holding them hostage in a classroom at Umpqua Community College in Roseburg, Oregon. That's right down the road from me. On October 1, 2015. He killed himself after a shootout with the police. Harper Mercer left a manifesto revealing a fascination with Elliot Rodger and school shooters. Columbine. His manifesto also revealed a hatred of black men, whom he blamed for corrupting white women. The black man is the most vile creature on the planet. He is a beast beyond measure. There is a particular irony to this thread of Harper Mercer's thoughts, which is discussed at the end of this section. Like Rodger, his postings in incel message forums revealed misogynistic and white supremacist ideological leanings. Even that right there, I had to pause because you include Elliot Rodger and this fella here, Christopher Harper Mercer, who you said your editor said, hey, you can't put the incels in there because these guys are not white. They both complain about that in their manifestos, and they both talk about their specific rage and disgust with black males. Whoa, did that stand at the black? I did not expect Black Miss Andrew to pop up in this book, but I do remember Elliot Rodger saying he would see a black dude with a white woman. And, oh my, you let this ape, how is this savage with a white woman and I, a goddess with a white parent, and I can't have a white woman? Oh, the outrage of it all. What do you make of the you see a pattern of this particular rage and disgust with black males?
So, actually, I looked at France Fanon, who wrote Black Faces, White Mask back in the 1950s. And he grew up on one of those French-controlled islands, African islands. And basically, his book, he talked about how colonialism made black children feel that they were inferior. And that the way they compensated, the way some of them compensated, was by seeing themselves as white. In other words, colonialism taught them to look down on black people. And so to the extent they were able to do that, what he said was basically the idea is that they look in a mirror and they see a white face looking back at them.
You talk about specifically with well, I'll read because this this is the subsection in chapter 3, identifying with whiteness, which I would say might be System of White Supremacy, racism. You write, a criticism regarding the inclusion of incels within the white Christian nationalist family is that not all incels are white. In a 2020 survey conducted by the moderators of a popular incel site, 55% of the respondents identified as white or Caucasian. It would be easy to say that almost half of the respondents not identifying as white, being a misogynist, is an equal opportunity endeavor. But that would not be accurate. Along with derogatory terms and violent imagery directed against women, incel social media sites are replete with white supremacist symbols, swastikas, racial slurs, and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Under these circumstances, the presence of non-whites on these sites does not signal the exclusion of incel ideology from the white Christian nationalist family, as much as it demonstrates the allure of white-topped racial hierarchies, even for non-whites. Among the perpetrators of incel violence in this section, both Elliot Rodger and Christopher Harper Mercer, I'd never even heard of him before I read this book, could be considered non-white. Both had white fathers. Rodger's mother was Asian and Harper Mercer's mother was black. Despite this, they both advocated for a white supremacist hierarchy. How could an inferior, ugly black boy be able to get a white girl and not me? Rodger once wrote, continuing, I am beautiful and I am half white myself. I'm descended from British aristocracy. He is descended from slaves. I deserve it more. For Rodger, encountering white women with a full-blooded Asian or an inferior Mexican guy while he was still suffering as a lonely virgin was rage-inducing. This was despite the fact that he could be considered half Asian. Nor did the simple fact of one parent's blackness deter Christopher Harper Mercer from expressing white supremacist sentiments. After expressing his contempt for black men in the most derogatory terms, he insisted that he was not racist. But don't take these words to be racist. I don't hate blacks, just the men. Now, of course, some of you will be saying, wait, you're 40% black, aren't you? Ah, yes, dear reader, I am. But thankfully, my partial blackness didn't come from a man. What Harper Mercer labeled the blackness effect only applied to black men. He argued that it would be better if all black women left the beast on the altar. educated old white man. Or lesbian exploration. All that's in direct quotes. Woo, that's what I mean. Like, I did not expect Black Miss Andry to pop up like that in the book, and with a dude I hadn't even heard of before, this Harper Mercer. Like, what is up with it, the specific, and even some of that's in the affirmative action. We had Jennifer Pierce as a guest on the program, white woman, affirmative action beneficiary. She wrote in her book, with affirmative action, Black Miss Andry is there too, because white people do not think black females are unqualified and undeserving of a job or scholarship. They practice racism, but they don't think they're dumb. It's just Leroy that they see, and she pulled the literature. She went back and went over it for decades. It's just Leroy that they think you are stupid, a monkey, and you are unqualified. They, like I said, they practice racism against black females, but they don't think you're dumb. That's just Leroy. What is it about black males that this unique? You get what I'm saying, Dr. Flowers?
Yeah, I actually think a lot of that is feeling threatened. It's not that they necessarily think black males are stupid. They feel threatened by black males. And also, if you want to eradicate a people, you get rid of their men.
Reminded me of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She used to say that exactly all the time. I saw folks who had hands up. If you have a question for Dr. Flowers, our favorite scholar grandmother, *61. If you have a question for Dr. Flowers. But Dr. have you heard of the work? Are you familiar with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing? She wrote the ISIS papers. Does that? Oh, okay. What do you think of
the Cress theory of color domination?
Gotcha. Do you think she's accurate, or?
I think there's something to be said for it. I mean, I found it interesting reading, and it explains a lot. You know, in the Cress theory of color domination, for instance, she talked about how white people make fun of black people's looks, the thick lips, but yet you see white women getting lip fillers, or you know, make their lips bigger, or you'll see white people laying out trying to get tans to make themselves darker. We won't even mention what people do today with the butt injections.
We're going to Brazil. They say that's the plastic surgery capital of the world, which is directly related to white supremacy or racism, because they have the highest concentration of black people in the Western Hemisphere, unless I've been misinformed. But whew, you can go to Brazil and get that Brazilian booty lift, and woo, come, man, Beyonce, get out of here, man. We good. Boy, I told folks we should go. Anyway, we have to do our surgery trip later. Folks who dialed in with a hand up for Dr. Flowers. We had just mentioned Cancer Alley, Louisiana, putting those detention camps in the northern part of Louisiana and other rural areas, a form of welfare. Y'all don't have any other jobs, no industry. Hey, we'll give you a baton, a badge. You can be a security guard for some dark people who maybe they're illegal citizens or whatever. We'll find out. But you could be a security guard. It'll be stable and you'll get benefits. Vacation. Be great. Irie, Louisiana, Cancer Alley. They had a cute name for it. I forgot. It was like Incarceration Alley or something like that. But they had another cute title for it. Irie, did you have commentary for Dr. Flowers?
They call it
What,
alligator Alcatraz.
That's it. That's for Florida, though. They had a cute term for the one in Louisiana. It was something similar to like Cancer Alley. I got the alligator Alcatraz. That's Florida, right, Dr. Flowers? Isn't that Florida?
Yeah, that's Florida.
Yeah, they got a cute one for Louisiana too. I forgot it though. I'm gonna have to go back and look. Irie in Louisiana, you should be with us.
Hello, thank you for taking the call. I was interested because I have such a varied experience with religion. When I heard that the topic was the religion of white supremacy, I tuned in, but it sounds like your book is concentrating on white nationalism and some surveying of the incel groups you were just talking about. Am I correct?
Well, actually, it's looking at white Christian nationalism as they're bringing it into the United States. And I looked at incels as part of the chapter on threats against women. But,
okay.
Yeah, in terms of white Christian nationalism, we see that seeping in. So, for instance, in Oklahoma, the state superintendent of education mandated that the Bible was to be taught in every classroom from 5th through 12th grade. Now, teachers don't have any background in teaching the Bible. They had problems getting Bibles for them to use, but this is now going to be part of the public school curriculum. In some jurisdictions, they are mandating that the 10 Commandments be posted in all classrooms. Oh, and can I mention that state superintendent who mandated the Bibles be taught in each classroom is now being investigated for looking at pornography on his computer at work. But anyway, but what white Christian nationalism really does is it seeks to impose an authoritarian government. It erodes our democratic principles, and it does it in the name of God. But it's a God that God himself wouldn't recognize, if that makes any sense. They call themselves Christians, but they're behaving in a very un-Christ-like way. But what they gain by calling themselves Christians is they gain unwavering support from a segment of the country. And one of the things is that white Christian nationalists have been around for decades, and they have summer camps where they train their children to be warriors for God. I mean, literally, they teach them to be warriors for God. If you think about it, a burning cross is the symbol. When you see a burning cross, you think Ku Klux Klan, right? But they're using the cross as their symbol. So the book is also about how we're trying to convey that Christianity has been misappropriated to justify oppression of non-white people.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, I understand. I was going to ask two questions. I'll try to ask them together, and then I'll mute my line. How many similarities to, say, for instance, the Crusades are you seeing with this particular exercise in white supremacy this time around? And the other question I was going to ask is how much infighting have you been able to document within white Christian nationalists? Because I'm sure even with them being Christian, there's Christians that practice, white Christians that practice one way and some that practice other ways. And I'm sure somewhere along the way, there's even people that may have more of a anarchical view, if I'm pronouncing that word right, of how things should occur, you know, given the parallels of a technocracy. That's what the white people call it, that seems to be, you know, being fabricated and enforced. I hope I made sense. Did that make sense? The two questions I asked?
It did. Okay, so I'm going to do your first one. I'm going to do them in order. How many similarities did I see to the Crusades? Well, they're actually, I would say the main similarity is in each case you have a group of people who are convinced that their vision of God is the only correct vision, and that in the Crusades, it justified them basically killing all the Muslims, or attempting to, so they could get Jerusalem. They didn't actually succeed. And in this case, it's, I don't want to say eradicating, but eliminating from political power minority groups. Because, see, it's not just Christian, they are white Christian nationalists. So they believe that God meant this country to be a white Christian nation. But it is a narrow view of Christianity. It is an evangelical view. And there are some Christians who actually disagree with the way they have appropriated the word Christian. It was just like after after 9/11, when the Twin Towers were bombed by Muslims, and some people said, well, you know, and I'm paraphrasing, but if you're saying that that's not a tenet of Islam, then the, quote, so-called good Muslims need to, call out those other ones. Well, by the same token, some people from mainstream Christian religions have actually called out white Christian nationalism for being very unchristian. But you are right. Your mention of a technocracy, I think, does play into that, because if you think of how much of our data is now in some government system, and those systems all used to be separate. They didn't talk to each other. They didn't share data until Elon Musk came along, and then started trying to make them share data. So now it's much easier to control people because they know everything about you. Just like they're trying to use tax records to find undocumented immigrants. Or they're using court records to grab undocumented immigrants when they show up for their court hearing. And all of that is facilitated by technology. But the thing about saying that, well, this is just part of my religious beliefs, is that then people think that they don't have to justify it. So, for instance, Tennessee has now passed, it's expanded the conscience laws. So it used to be doctors did not have to perform abortions if it was against their personal beliefs. Well, now they have expanded those laws, so doctors, hospitals, insurance companies don't have to provide services or pay for services that they have a moral objection to. So a woman in Tennessee who's 35 years old, has been with her partner for 15 years, is pregnant. And her doctor told her that he could not treat her because she was unmarried. And that violated his religion. So now think about the next step. So what happens when a gay person goes in They have the flu. The doctor says, well, I can't treat you because you're gay, and I disagree with that. So then you go out and expose everybody else to the flu. Or a black person goes into a doctor, and maybe the black person is in an interracial marriage. They're married, but it's an interracial marriage. Doctor doesn't believe in interracial marriages. It's against his religion. So it's a way of, it's oppressing people. And Christianity was never meant to be oppressive.
Did you want to get Dr. Flowers her question about the infighting amongst these groups? I think that was her other question.
Okay. Well, I kind of answered it. The groups, it's not that the white Christian nationalists aren't fighting, but other Christians are saying, you know, these people don't speak for us. These people, this really is not Christianity. So, like, someone from the Baptist wrote a paper about the danger presented by white Christian nationalism and the danger presented by trying to make the United States operate on religious rules, because it was a threat to our pluralistic society. So the fighting, it's not fighting. It's more a case of people, Christians outside of the group of white Christian nationalists, are starting to call them to account. They just don't listen. Did that answer your question?
It did. I was just talking to someone about something like this, that whole situation in Europe where they go from these periods when it comes to religion and philosophy, where they totally abuse people, and then from there they reform themselves. So, but yeah, thank you. That did answer the question, and I'll mute my line.
Much obliged, Irie in Cancer Alley. It was Dr. Flowers, when you were giving your responses, especially to the latter portion of her question, Irie's question, and you were talking about the so-called infighting or disagreeing that some of the presumably white people affiliated with Christianity would say, wait a minute, these white Christian nationalists, they do not speak for us. And getting some pushback. You said that, hey, some of these presumably white people, Christians, allegedly, that they are calling out some of these white Christian nationalists practicing racism, but they don't listen. That right there, I know as a black male, privileged, I know what it's like to be called out by white people for misbehavior when they don't like something that you're doing. Very rarely, when white people call me out on something, is it ever an option for me as a privileged black male. Whatever, whitey, I don't have to pay no attention to you. Man, that is rarely an option on the table. To be called out by other white people where you can just say, whatever, and continue about your business, that makes me think like either one of two things, like this was not a real call out, because I know what it looks like when white people call you out. Oh, it's serious. P. Diddy, serious. Either they're not really, this is not really serious in terms of, hey, you're going to stop all this and blah, 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 not in our name. Same kind of criticism that Dr. King gave way back all that time ago. Or these are very, very impotent white people who are doing the calling out. Like, you got no money, and you're not, this is not no Jeff Bezos, this is not no Elon Musk. You don't have billions of dollars that you can go get high-powered attorneys and put out some big-time commercials and ad campaign, and that's not the type of people that we're talking about. These are some pretty lame white people who do not have very much power to do anything to make change. It would have to be one or the other.
Well, it's a question of power. So, right, the tech bros have all seen where the power is, and they have planted themselves by the power. But you have people. So remember, the female Episcopal minister who basically during the church service following the inauguration, and she looked dead at the president and called on him to remember basically all the people he's oppressing. You know, the LGBTQ community, the immigrant community, the homeless, the women. He was so mad with her. I think she's a bishop. He was really angry. He wanted her removed from her position. But one of the reasons they don't listen is what makes them so dangerous. When you have decided that you're on a mission for God, then you're going to disregard everything else. And that's the problem with when you are trying to theocratic governments, religious-based governments, and democracies can't coexist, because theocracy, you're doing what you said God told you to do. That means you don't listen to opposition. And that's what is unfolding here. But it's really not about religion, it's about power. They're using that to get the power that they want to control things.
Fascinating. Okay. With the LGBTQ, and I guess I would just say I agree completely in terms of where you said you cannot have an authoritarian theocracy. I don't use those terms. That you can't have that and a democracy. We do not have a democracy. We have a system of white supremacy. That's my view. That's one of those. That's my view. But I do think there's a lot of evidence that is fact indeed. I could go and get evidence to support. But either way, we do not have a democracy. And when I look at that, I do not think that white women are subject to male supremacy. I do not think white LGBTQ people are subject to, I don't even know what that would be, cisgender oppression. Again, I live in Seattle. The white gay people here look like they are doing A-OK. I was not here for Pride Parade last month, but I'm told that they had a blast. In fact, you write, this is in chapter, so we moved forward one chapter. So this is requiring gender conformity. You write, despite some forward progress, LGBTQ individuals continue to be marginalized as a matter of law based on their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. This is accomplished through intimidation, harassment, physical attacks, and the use of lawsuits to whittle away at LGBTQ rights and protections. This chapter will examine legal actions at the national level to see how we arrived at this point. Using selected examples, it will also illustrate the manner in which these judicial and legislative actions occur as a part of a larger socio-political environment. And I come back to the same thing we said at the beginning. One, white genetic annihilation. I think you have a lot of white people who practice racism. They're opposed to anything that is not about male, female. We need more white babies, period. We need more white babies, and anything that seems like it is going to be against production of white babies, I'm totally opposed to it. Let's get it out of here. And we even heard this in the South African context. We had Nikki Falco. And what you said before, in an environment, white minority population greatly outnumbered by dark people like South Africa, she said that they had explicit policies that forbid homosexual activity, not for the black people of South Africa, just for white people. And we talked about that in detail because I was stunned, and just to get more details, and she said specifically white people viewed homosexual activity amongst white people as a threat to white power. They did not feel that way about black people being engaged in LGBTQ. So that's one major component in my brain computer. And then, just like I said, white gay people, for Devontae Hart, white LGBTQ people practice racism, and they have quite a bit of power to deal with being mistreated. I think it is massively conflation. That's the term I use, conflation, when people compare the plight of white women and or white LGBTQ to victims of white supremacy. Because when you did your section on voting, I don't remember you including not one example of gay white people saying, man, they purged us and won't let us vote. I don't remember no examples of white women. They won't let us vote. It's tons for black. I mean, any era that you want to talk about, it's tons for dark people. Not gay white people, not queer white people, not bisexual white people. Am I being evident? This is one of those for real. This cannot be my truth. Am I being evidence-based and logical, Dr. Flowers?
That is actually a fact. You are correct. The fact of being white gives you automatic privilege, no matter what you are. And that fact is how white supremacy perpetuates itself. Because you look and they're passing laws. Okay, let's look at slavery. Slavery did not benefit the poor white farmer. He didn't own slaves, and he was outproduced by the larger plantations. But it was that poor white farmer who went and fought and died in the Civil War for the rich landowner to keep his slaves. Why? Because they convinced that white farmer, who was dirt poor, that no matter how little you have, you're still better than the black person. And that is how they maintain power. I have a quote in there. Did you see the quote from Lyndon Johnson that I used? He basically said,
if you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. He'll give him somebody to look down on, and he'll empty his pocket for you. There you go. Page 8.
But see, what that does, it kind of encapsulates how in any other country, all these class divisions might have resulted in some type of conflict, but not here, because we cover the class divisions with race. So no matter how oppressed you might feel as a white person, you're still white, and your whiteness gives you some privilege. And we know, for instance, that in the women's movement, there's racism. In the LGBTQ movement, there is racism. Black trans women are disproportionately likely to be the victims of assaults, aggravated assaults, or killed. You know, those are the facts. We're more likely to be killed. No matter what we are as black people, we are more likely to be killed. But in terms of gender conformity, and I also think that you're correct, that particularly in regards to white people, the issue is reproduction. You know, we need more white babies. But it's black people who are still more likely to be victimized. For starters, because we may have been lower down on the social scale to start with. So then when you have all these, think about all these new things they're doing. So, for instance, the law I mentioned from Tennessee a few minutes ago. So now, well, I'm a doctor. I don't have to treat you because I don't believe in being gay. So now you have lost your access to health care. And you're black. So you don't necessarily have additional resources to go find a doctor and pay. This is a doctor that's on your health insurance or your Medicaid. So it becomes very problematic. And then they're tying that, to go back to what you said about they want more white babies. You know, some countries like Hitler's Germany, you know, women had a certain number of babies, they got an award. Trump was talking about paying women $5,000 to have a baby. Now, having had some of my own, I can tell you $5,000 isn't going to do much in terms of the cost of raising a baby. But they are implementing policies that are flying under the radar that privilege traditional households. So even something as obscure for most people as Fulbright Awards, which are named after some senator, a former senator, and they fund university students to go and study in another country for a semester or a year. And they're selected by this panel. He tossed out half of them because he didn't like who they selected. I'm willing to bet you that the Fulbright recipients he tossed out were recipients of color, because they've made a push to get more recipients of color. But he's talking about, you know, giving priorities to students who have, you know, the awardees who have children, married with children. Now, if you're married with children, you probably aren't applying for a Fulbright Award, unless you're a man. You know, little things like that they're kind of slipping in that you don't really notice, but when you put them all together, it does send a clear message. You know, we want you to have babies for the fatherland, as long as they're the right kind of babies.
The right kind of babies, the right kind. We don't want no interracial and Obamas. That we don't get all that. We done with all that. This is on page 142 in chapter 8. Dr. Flowers get in one of my last couple of questions here, so we don't have to take up the whole evening. But on chapter 8, this is page 148. Dr. Flowers writes, "It is important to see that the struggle against these efforts is interconnected. Restricting reproductive rights and attacking LGBTQ plus rights both stem from ideologies of control, making them fundamentally connected battles for bodily autonomy and the right to live lives free from persecution. The right to live lives free from persecution also encompasses those whose racial, ethnic, or religious identities make them non-white or non-Christian, often synonymous. In 1971, Fannie Lou Hamer delivered a speech before the founding meeting of the National Women's Political Caucus titled "Nobody's Free Until Everybody's Free," in which she enjoined black and white women to work together for freedom for all. To apply that to this instance, all those targeted by white Christian nationalism must recognize the interconnectedness of the struggle against the manifestations of white Christian nationalism, whether it's present as white supremacy, white nationalism, anti-immigrant, Islamophobia, racism, anti-Semitism, sexism, misogyny, anti-LGBTQ+, or in any other way. This book is intended to highlight that interconnection. And I read that, I thought, wow, especially when I read that portion about the late Mississippi, call it the Mississippi vasectomy, that portion about Fannie Lou Hamer. I said, man, being truthful, as the young people used to say, keeping it 100. What has been like your personal experience with females classified as white, Dr. Flowers?
I would say my experience has it's ranged the gamut. I've got some very close friends who are white. I've also encountered some white women I wouldn't necessarily want to encounter again. I mean, there's always the one you encounter them and they look like they're expecting you to go get their coffee or something for them. I tend to ignore those. But, at this point in my life, I'm going to be around people that treat me the way I expect to be treated. And so I have the luxury of being able to find those people. I think that any time you're dealing with people who are not like you, it's always an exploration. So, for instance, just talking to my husband sometimes, I realize things that men see differently from women. Sometimes I have realized, I've noticed something, say, with one of my white friends, and it's very clearly a privilege, something I've had a couple that I pointed out that, your ability to do that is a function of privilege. And for me, it's been interesting because to see the things that other people take for granted that are not necessarily a part of your life.
Can you give us an example, without a name, of course, keeping it anonymous, but can you give us an example of one of the times where you said, wow, your ability to do that? Like, what specifically were they engaged in when you said, wow, that is, I just don't use the word privilege because I always think it's the most accurate, power. Can you give out an example of what they were doing specifically where you said, hey, that is your power, your white power? Mm-hmm.
Now we call it intergenerational transfer of wealth, which, most black people don't have. But just a little put it in context, when I was in law school, there was this class, wills, trusts, and estates that most people took. And the black students always had difficulty with it. In fact, the year before I graduated, a couple of black students didn't pass that course, had repeated. So I'm sitting in the class, and the instructor keeps talking about, now, life insurance passes outside the estate. That's why, you want to have a large life insurance policy. It passes outside the estate. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, what difference does it make? It's only enough to bury you with. Because that was my experience. Black people had life insurance so their family could bury them. And I was sitting there realizing, oh, wow. People have life insurance to pass money on to their children. So that was actually first time I became aware of that. But or realizing the extent to which some people who live very modestly, because you're trying to figure out how somebody that makes the same amount of money you do can manage a few other things, and they're getting money. They're paying for their children's private school with money from a trust that their father left. So it's like, oh, you leave trust and then your grandchildren can go to private school. Got it. So it was really those things, which for me was an eye opener, and it occurred over a period of years.
Wow. Thank you for the detail. That immediately reminded me of Calvin Schermerhorn's book. He was a guest on our program this year, and he talked about the deliberate effort of the business of slavery and the rise of American capitalism, where he talks about the deliberate efforts of white people to make sure that black people have nothing. Like, we don't even want you to have enough money to bury your relative when they die. You're not even supposed to have that. It's supposed to be total zero or debts or something. You got to come, will come and steal the nickels out of your cock to get what he owed us when he croaked. That type of thing. But that's what his whole book is about. And that sort of differential, that makes it plain, at least for me. Wow, that is not privilege. If you got a secret slush fund that is probably from slavery or convict leasing system or some other component of white supremacy, and you got this slush fund set aside so you can have private school, and so that it's not taxed. That right there. See, they set up whole classes so you can do this, and that way you don't have to pay no estate taxes or inheritance taxes or anything like that. Like, man, that was a part of his book, because he said white people, the more money you get, the more creative ways they cheat the tax system. And then you look at public finance like, man, we are missing all kinds of dollars for that. That's right there. White people not paying their share of taxes. But that's another book, another topic. But then they aggressively, the IRS, they got whole reports where the IRS, they aggressively go after black people who don't even have any money. But the IRS, they aggressively go after black people. Ronald Isley, heavyweight champion, illiterate, great Joe Louis. That's who they go after, the IRS. But anyway, that's why I say, that for sure is not my truth, just the accuracy of words. That is not privilege. That is power. How do you stockpile that sort of wealth for generation? And then, like I said, profits from racism, and then I'm not even going to pay the taxes on this properly. We go to school to figure out how to duck all those estates. That is power, like to the nth degree. And then they lie about it, encourage us to minimize and use all these euphemisms. Well, it's privilege. They keep black people from being able to read and then say privilege. Anyway, much obliged for the illustrations, Dr. Flowers and Dr. Angelyn Spaulding Flowers in the great new book. Lots of detail. I guess if I had to get in one more, there were so many great components. If I had to get in one, the term majority minority was used in the book quite a bit. Is that, when you say majority minority, do you mean majority non-white?
Yes. That's not my term. That's the term they use to refer to it. So yeah, it's say a city where the majority of the people are minorities.
Got it. I think that term will be, I'd heard it before I read this book. I think that term will be in greater use if what we have been told is true, that the numbers in terms of white people, either their percentage is declining or their actual numbers of white people are declining. Either or, if that is true, we'll probably hear this term used even more. And that's another one where I say this is not a my truth. It's just being accurate. Like, one, I always pause, like, for clarity's sake, what majority, what? Are there minority, majority places? Like, what is going on? Like, majority non-white? Got it. Now I understand what we're talking about. Like, just a resistance to being at. So you talked about that, lies and not being truthful. The system of white supremacy operates by lots of deception and lying and not using the most accurate terms, deliberately so. One other one that at least stands out for me, especially what we heard Elliot Rodger and all the black misandry and hatred of black males. It always, I guess, one, I am not of the opinion that we are in a patriarchy. I am of the opinion this is a white matriarchy, and globally so. They asked, we're reading about Mary Kay Letourneau, Seattle legend, and her white husband, Steve Letourneau, was asked, who wears the pants in the family? And I said, that's obvious. Mary Kay wears the breeches in this household. And I think that's true not just in the Letourneau household. That's true throughout the plantation of white supremacy racism, but neither here nor there. When you say male supremacy and patriarchy, and I hear this from lots of folks, they don't even stick the white in front of it. And I look at them and I say, now, for me, for Leroy, Trayvon, are you telling me that black males participate in male supremacy? And if so, how?
Well, actually, some do, some don't. For instance, think about the civil rights movement. All those women who were the ones doing the legwork and making the stuff happen. But who is it that's always on stage? The men. Yet the March on Washington, they had one black woman speaking. All those black women who had worked to make that thing happen, and they had one black woman on stage. One of the things that black women have often had to struggle with is oppression, not just by white people, but by black men. And the notion that, society puts black men down, so we have to pump them up, which is fine, except when they don't return the favor. And sometimes they don't. Because they can buy into elements of white supremacy, just like white people can. Now, that's ironic because a lot of African societies were matriarchies. Okay, but the European ones were patriarchies. So, like I say, some are, some aren't. But one of the things I said in that chapter was that the notion of the stereotype of a traditional family did not apply to black people. Okay? For starters, the wives often worked outside the home to help support the family. Also, because of racism, whereas white people would educate their sons and expect their daughters to marry well, black people, if they could only educate one, they would educate their daughter so she didn't have to work in somebody's kitchen. They figured their son could get a job in a factory. So because of racism, we approach gender relationships a little differently. But you can still find some patriarchy in the black community, especially if you're a black woman.
Let's ask this. She said that some black males participate in oppression of females and some don't. I certainly. Do you think some black males participate in oppression of white females?
No.
Okay. Now, see that right there, since we got such a quick no, I think that invalidates you do not have male supremacy. If you got male supremacy, Leroy, me, Trayvon, we should at least be able to smack white women around. And you know that ain't so, and that ain't never been so. We don't have male supremacy. We have white. Hang on a second. Hang on. I do want to finish. Hang on. That means we have white male supremacy. Maybe you have junior tiers or something, but just that right there, if you got junior tiers, do we have it or we not? Now, come back to, so I guess some black males are able to oppress black females. Have black males made it difficult? Were black males in the way of you getting tenure? Black males in the way of you publishing any of your books? Black males in the way of you, I don't know, getting a loan or anything constructive? Were black males the barrier?
No, so when I'm talking about in terms of family relationships, organizational relationships, where you can find black men acting in a patriarchal manner. And it's because they are modeling the behavior they have seen in the white patriarchy and trying to reproduce it.
Okay, I'm not saying that I agree with that or disagree. Just given the context of our discussion, Douglas Blackman, Slavery by Another Name, that's black misandry too. That was not equal opportunity. We're snagging people for vagrancy laws. That was way disproportionate. We're snagging Leroy and putting you, privileged black dude, on the chain gang. Leroy and the others in that book, they may have at points spoke or talked like a white male patriarch. It's a little different doing that on a Georgia chain gang. It has a slightly different impact, but either way.
Yeah, but see, patriarchy you only demonstrate within, say, your household. So the question is, when Leroy gets home from the chain gang, wife has been out there trying to feed the children the whole time he's been gone, what are his expectations?
Okay. I'll process on that one. The two, I just want to say, for me, the logic just does not add up on this at all, and I mean at all. In a system where black females, according to the metrics in this part of the world, at minimum, have more education, and that's been the case for a long time, live longer, and that's been the case for a long time, are less likely to be homeless, and that's been the case for a long time, and are less likely to be victims of violence. These are all the major metrics that you can talk about oppression. Those are the type of stats I would look at. The fact that black females have better stats in all these areas than black males, and then black males aren't in charge of nothing. Just the education alone, I don't know how you would be oppressed by someone. You have more education than they do, and they're more likely to be homeless. I mean...
Well, because... No, you're not going to be oppressed by the homeless one. The question is, are you being oppressed by the one in your home? And so when you're talking about patriarchy, you're really talking about the family unit.
Well, as I've been told, a lot of black people don't get... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does he control what his wife does? Does he control the money, the spending?
I could be totally in error. I certainly have not controlled the finances of very many black females. And again, if black females have better education and are more likely to be employed, it's hard for me to imagine how there would be a structure in place where black dudes set out and we have a system to oppress black females when they have more money, more education, they live longer. How? That doesn't even That does not make sense at all. But either or, I could be.
Those highly educated, successful black women you're talking about are more likely to be single than their white counterparts.
Does that mean they're oppressed by black males?
No, but no. The question is, to what extent are some black men feel subconsciously threatened by a woman who might be more educated than they are?
I don't know. They say I'm privileged and threatening. One thing I do want to point out, just not to Terry, when you did, and it's in the book as well, that black parents would choose to educate their daughters as opposed to their sons because they didn't want their daughters to be in the kitchen. Even in my mind, it kind of pulled me to Rosa Parks and that kind of fear of being raped in a white household, which was a rampant fear. But, okay, right on. I was right there with you. Okay. But I don't think that's the reason that dynamic exists and still exists. Because you still see that where it's way, way disproportionate the number of black females at institutions like yours, I would bet, and all the others, and has been that way for more than a century. Frederick Douglass talked about this. It's not because I don't think black parents in 2025 or 1925 sat down and said, hey, we got to make sure that our black daughter doesn't get raped. We'll send her to school. Leroy, do the best you can. Get that factory job or whatever. I think that same black misandry.
Yeah.
I just want to finish this really quick. The system of white supremacy, I think the dynamic that white people have set up forever, it seems, we're not going to educate black dudes. That's slavery by another name, Douglas Blackman. That's the school to prison pipeline. It seems and has been very trained on black males for a long time. And I think that's the dynamic as to why you see large numbers of black females where they get through school, college, all of that, not black dudes. I don't think that's black parents making that choice or setting up even that power dynamic. I think that's white people. Now, your response?
Okay, so that section of the book, when I was talking about that, I was talking about a historical. I was talking about that period back when the, quote, typical household was a working father and a stay-at-home mother. And I was saying that traditional household was typical for white households. Black households had a different typical. But it was talking about that era. So we're talking 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Now it is a different issue. And you're right. If you look at HBCUs, for example, the number of black male students is so low. It is actually at crisis proportions, because now what you have these educated female students. Some places might be 8 women to 2 male students. And this really poses a threat to the ability to form stable black households moving forward, because they're not just not going to college, these black males. They're not doing anything. They're not in a position to marry and support a family. So it's like a complete potential for destabilizing black families.
Dr. Welsing, she used to be a guest on our program before she passed at the very beginning of 2016, but she talked about that exact dynamic that you just laid out, Dr. Flowers, and she called that a form of genocide. When you put a group of people in a position where they can't form healthy family units to take care of their offspring, that is a form of genocide. And in your response, I repeat, Dr. Tommy Curry, he's the one that made me aware of this. It's in his book, The Man Not, Race, Class, Genre, and the Dilemmas of Black Manhood. that dynamic was in existence well before the 1940s and 1950s. That's why I said when I was giving my question, this has been like this for over 100 years. Frederick Douglass talked about that exact same dynamic that you talked about over 100 years ago. Dang, we don't have no black male students on the campus. This is at the beginning of the 1900s. That's why I'm saying I think there's something far greater going on than just black parents really having any sort of thought process about this at all. I think the dynamic is white people have decided we're not educating black males. Apparently they decided this a long time ago, and you see that dynamic over 100 years. That's what it's looked like. I'm saying this is not new at all, and I'm saying white people are most to blame. It's that same Elliot Rodger, that black beast, that what you said, the threat of the black. So how do you that's what I'm saying. It's no way you can have black males as oppressors, because we are pretty ignorant. White people have decided so. So, man, I mean, black males in particular are so low functioning and allowed to do so little. Man, I mean, Trayvon as oppressor? Really? Tamir Rice? George Floyd? Anyway, speaking of George Floyd, man, before we let you out of here, Dr. Flowers, I enjoyed the book. Thank you for letting me get a few pushback on a little bit of the concepts for us no count oppressive black dudes. They have a movie, or there are 3 of them that are exactly lined up with your book. Oh my gosh, and they're recent. The Order. I went to Los Angeles for the American Film Institute Festival the end of last year, and they played The Order. That is about white supremacist group in Washington State. They are inspired by the Bible to create a white ethno-state, and the book The Turner Diaries. This is based on truth. Robert J. Matthews, also right up there with Mary Kay Turner, Washington State icon. But they go out and rob banks here in Washington and California to support their racist movement. They have gun battles with citizens and police officers. And I mean, anyway, that's The Order, but it's exactly white Christian nationalism. They go to church. It's The Order. So that's one. Second movie, Sovereignty, just came out within the last 10 days. It's about a white man. You talked about the Bundy clan, and hey, you're not going to push us around. We're upset. The federal government, you don't tell me what to do. You don't have authority over me. I'm a sovereign white man, and that's what the whole movie's about. How he gets radicalized. He and his son just came out in the last 10 days. Oh my goodness. And the movie I'd been looking to see, Eddington. It just came out in the last 10 days. You write about the conspiracy theories and how all this overlap, connecting the dots. COVID-19, you have lots of these people classified as white. Say we're anti-vax. You don't tell me what to do. We're not going to stay at home. And this overlaps with the anti-right, far-right, or extremism, white Christian nationalism. All of this kind of overlaps. This film, Eddington, that just came out, I wanted to see it because it's supposed to be about this small fictitious town where they have brawls over the pandemic. You're not going to make me mask. You're not going to make me distance. I personally thought it was too soon for all that, but I was going to watch it. Oh my God. Racism, the overlap. Racism is a core part of this movie. It's a quick clip. But it's right. So much of what you talked about in your film. This clip, white children in this movie are protesting racism. They have Black Lives Matter protests. One of their protests gets interrupted by an enforcement officer. They make him go away, shoo him, or whatever. Talk about white privilege, so-called. They shoo him and make him go away. So he leaves them. And you get to hear their conversation about why they're doing this. The conversation shifts, and you hear one of these white children who has been out at the Black Lives Matter protest in the midst of the Rona. He goes home to his white parents and is trying to explain to them what their goal is to dismantle whiteness and racism. Oh my God. This is 50 seconds. We'll get your thoughts on this and let you enjoy your evening. This is from the film Eddington it's in you all could go watch this in the movies today if you wanted to. Playing right now, Eddington.
How many people did you invite?
There should be more coming.
Yeah. No, just because there's a protest at the Roundhouse in Santa Fe, and that's where we should actually be. Like, we gotta be careful. We can't just feel happy with ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously agree with that.
Yeah, and sorry, but you called yourself anti-racist earlier, and we can't just take that. Like, do you know what that would actually mean? Because I'm not an anti-racist either, but right now we're playing at maybe being like white critical. Maybe we're white traitors, but the goal is to be white abolitionists, and that means actually
changing institutions, dismantling whiteness, and not allowing whiteness to reassert itself. But we're pretty much light years away from that. Are you f***ing retarded? What the f*** are you talking about? You're white.
Cannot be ignorant about racism if you are classified as white. But this is in the middle of a movie that came out days ago that is about white people fighting about the conspiracy theory. Oh my God. They have cameos to George Floyd, and in between all this are conspiracy theory. The government is lying to us about COVID-19. There is no COVID. They have QAnon. Where they cut from this, all of this. I had no idea, and I still think it is way too soon. But man, a lot of this is in your book where you talk about the convergence of the COVID-19 people who say, I'm not going to wear a mask, I'm anti-vax, that all of this converges with the white Christian nationalism. Did I read that correctly from the text?
Yep. You did. But now it does converge, and actually those movies sound interesting. I wrote them down so I could put them on my list. I've actually seen part of the order. I just hadn't it.
It is amazing. I'm ashamed even. I think this might be a subtle aspect of racism, subtle but important, because the order happened. This is not something that they made up. Like, Robert J. Matthews is an actual person who did have shootouts with the police, was killed by the police. Like, all of this did happen. Nazi, racist, all of this happened. I had to go to L.A. to see that at the theater. It did not play in the theaters in the Seattle area. This is Washington State history. What in the world? And it was a great film. Jude Law, I mean, woo! Man. Jussie Smollett, for people who remember him, Chicago infamy, his sister is in the order. Sovereignty.
Oh, okay.
Woo! Man. Sovereignty, same thing. People said, dang, I had trouble. Where is that in the theaters? I don't see. What? Now, I think Eddington is widely available. That's it. I could walk to the theater to see Eddington, like, today. That one should be easy, but whew, oh my, just for that scene, I was stunned because I had no idea that. I thought it was about COVID-19, which it is, but wow, they could have just told this is a movie about white people pretend, because they said in that clip, they said we are playing white critical, whatever that means. That might be some of the white people said, hey, you white Christian nationalists, cut it out, stop doing all that. And they just look over and they keep doing. But anyway, the book that we have talked about just came out, like the films that I just mentioned, just came out this year. And why I say reading more important than watching television. Reading this book and knowing about this information helped those films have more value. And even to know, oh, wait a minute, this is not fiction. I know who Robert J. Matthews is because I have read about him. And Seattle history. Come on. The book we talked about today, White Christian Nationalism in the United States, A Rising Tide Sinks All Boats. Great imagery on the front of the book. And the other book you should have too, 20 Years of School-Based Mass Shootings in the United States, Columbine to Santa Fe, because Columbine gets mentioned all the time. You should definitely read that book too. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. As usual, she comes by about once a year to hang out, field our goofy questions and such. Thank you so much for sharing your time and insight and letting me know the book was coming so I could be aware. Always appreciate getting new literature. Keep up your outstanding and much needed work, Dr. Flowers, and grandparenting as well. Black grandmothers are super, super, super valuable. Man, keep up the outstanding work.
Thank you, and it was good talking to you again. I enjoyed it as always.
We will look forward to visit number 4. Our guest, Dr. Angelyn Spaulding Flowers, grandmother, scholar, equally important. Enjoy the rest of your summer and Monday evening. Keep up your outstanding work. We will be looking for book number 3.
Okay, thanks. You take care.
Yes, ma'am. You too. Context of White Supremacy. Third time guest on the program, grandmother scholar, Dr. Angelyn Spaulding Flowers. Check out both books. Super informative. Again, the title just came out this year, White Christian Nationalism in the United States, A Rising Tide Sinks All Boats. Might be one right when they have new books. If you do the library experiment, you go to your local library anyway. Really, you don't even have to go to the library. You could probably just go to the website for your local library, right? And you could either call, email, or they might even have a tab, because I think for some of the local public libraries, they just have a tab where it says something really simple like request a book, and you can go put the title, author, all the identifying information. If they don't have it in their catalog, sometimes they'll get it, sometimes they won't. But generally, I say black author talking about white supremacy, racism. That should be something we should get. It's new, just came out. It's talking about things that just happened. Get it. That might be the thing that, triggers a victim of racism to, wow, this white supremacy thing is serious. I need to study this. Yes, we do. But that would be an idea. And even just for the experiment, see what happens. Do they get the book? Do they give you some lame excuse? Do you think you ran into racism? All of that would be constructive, and just in the effort of reading is more important than watching television. Even Eddington? Yes, even Eddington. I stopped watching Eddington so I could read this book. Watch TV anytime. Gee whiz. Anywho, quick commercial. One will be here tomorrow, same time. California wildfires impact on black homeowners. Cannot wait. I think that's so important. But quick break. We will be right back. Context of White Supremacy.
And from the late 1960s, after the death of Martin Luther King and the riots and the upheavals and all like this, and black people with their fists in the air and all like that, and trying to stumble and fumble and find their way and get focus, the white supremacists made a blueprint and put it into action. And that is, I'm going to have these people so confused, they don't even know what they started out to do. And by the late 1970s, they just about completed it. And we've been on that ever since. And you mentioned something very important. They are more comfortable than ever. But see, it's like making gorillas comfortable in a cage, or monkeys, or pandas. You still got them in a cage, but they're comfortable. See, so give him some bling-bling. It's like giving an animal a brand new car and training the animal to ride up and down the street in it. And then you stand back and point at the animal. Like one white man said in the late 1950s. He said he doesn't care what kind of car a Negro has. He said he's still a nigger. And when he rides by in a shiny car, to him, it's just a monkey in a car. White people built a car, put a monkey in it, train the monkey to drive the car, so now you're looking at a monkey in a car. See, but black people don't see themselves that way. But this is how the white supremacists see us, and they are the ones who run our business. And we have to know that when they look at us, that's what they see. That's what they see. That's what they see. And at a subliminal level, what they see begins to spill over into our brains so that we, at a subliminal level, see each other that way. And indirectly see ourselves that way.
Context of White Supremacy. We will be here on Tuesday. Same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Again, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Active for summer 2025. Although I think we are pretty active, generally speaking, throughout our 16-year broadcast history. It's not like 2014, we were doing one program a week. 2012, we didn't do one program a week. So, counter-racist grind continues. But tomorrow, most immediately, Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Racism-notes.blogspot.com. Listener-supported counter-racist radio. Hopefully we have been worthy of your time and energy over the decade plus. You can hit the blog. You'll see the PayPal button in the top right corner. Beneath the button, you'll see links for Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal. Enormous gratitude to all of our investors. Hopefully we've been worthy of your time and energy. You can also invest, hit our Amazon wish list, listed under Gus T. Renegade. Enormous gratitude to all of our investors who have nabbed an item or 50 over the 16 years that we have been on the air. Hopefully we have been constructive more often than not over that time. Our chit chat for today. One, I'm so glad. Just one, reading new information, so much to learn and just be aware of. I was not informed. There's so much that I'm not informed about, so it's not don't ever be embarrassed or feel some type of way about not being informed. It's so much to be informed about. But Adriana Smith, I was not aware of that case, so that amongst many other reasons. The other, not just Elliot Rodger, but one, even though I am very aware of Elliot Rodger, I always appreciate an opportunity to have a constructive counter-racist exchange about Elliot Rodger, especially with someone who, hey, this fella was grousing about not being white. I got one white parent, but that isn't enough. I still got a touch of the tar brush. In fact, Mary Kay Letourneau, blonde. He got that section in his manifesto talking about being blonde and blonde. Anyway, since it came up today, Peyton Gentrin was in the discussion. Gotta go to Buffalo and kill all these niggers. If it's constructive for Gus T to go to Buffalo, invest. You can process it out, even pros and cons. Is it worthwhile? Is this one to be better with you and your lack of people skills, which might have been on display with Dr. Flowers? Might be better for you to just sit, in 206 and watch this on YouTube. That might be true. Certainly it would be less costly. Anywho, with content for today, I can only say, I don't have white friends. I don't have friends, period. Uncouth, worthless Negro from Virginia. But I don't have white friends. And I think it would be very, very hard, nigh on impossible, for me to wrestle up 1 or 3 white friends, even if I lived another 50 years. Man. Anyway, but victims guaranteed qualified. I was going to ask, I had it down. Do you think there are people classified as white who are not racist? But once she said she had white friends, it seemed, a moot question at that point. I don't have white friends. Man, I do not give a framework, or I do not think about racism, white supremacy that allows for or assumes that there are white people who are not racist. But that's very common. And I said it seems I am the only one, because I can't really think of anybody else where that's kind of, very important to how they conceptualize what white supremacy racism is. Everybody. Neely Fuller Jr. Everybody. Not all white people are racist. I don't know anybody other than myself that we need to stop saying that. Even if you have white friends, it shouldn't mean they're not racist, because they might have fooled me. Anyway, but man, to get that, white friends, and they're white people that are probably not racist, and white women and LGBTQ and all that, and Leroy is an oppressor and a patriarch? That was a little tough for Gus T. That was a little tough. I'm so glad, again, top 10, the man, not race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood. We did read that in the Catherine Massey book club not that long ago. But we did read that. I can only say the March on Washington, my view, that is not an example of black males oppressing black females. That is not my view. If anything, the March on Washington, which we have talked about extensively, the people who were most in charge of that event, most to blame for that event, are classified as white. Racial Matters, Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly. Didn't they just release the King Files? That would be my starting point for that. I think Dr. Welsing, the great, she said, if you haven't read Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly's Racial Matters, you cannot discuss white supremacy racism. He has a whole section about that March on Washington. Who is in charge of what happened August 28, 1963? It was not Dr. King. Not by a long stretch. You had black people. Anyway, that's one. You can research, but I do not think that that is an example of black males oppressing black females. Not at all. Dr. Curry even talked about that. Now, even if okay, we're going to put that on the board as one. The number of platforms that I just told you, I went to the Public Health Symposium on anti-racism public health symposium, University of Washington. They had a panel of speakers. It was one, same thing she just said, it was one non-white male. They had about a dozen speakers paid, come talk, present their views, books, whatever. It was one non-white male speaker. They only had, it was less than 5 non-white male spectators at a public event at a university that has a student body over 40,000. When I went up and said something about it, I said, yes, we know. I said, in fact, how many black dudes are in the School of Health? I said, I think it's 1, 2. It wasn't said with no outrage and we got, a petition and, we going to get Leroy. And it was none of that. And I said then, This is all the time. It's not like this is the first time that I've seen this where something constructive, we're going to be doing something that's beneficial. Ain't no black males here. Don't nobody say nothing. I didn't say they just were going to give a lot of speeches like, this is something useful. This is something that will benefit you. They even had meals that day. They had all kinds of stuff. Do that. They had attorneys, all kinds of stuff. Not just singing songs. They didn't have Leroy. Matter of fact, they don't even have Leroy at the university. That's what I mean. Like, now, if that's going to be called oppression, Dr. King and old Jesse Jackson and the rest of them folks, A. Philip Randolph, y'all are black brutes, toxic males, oppressive. You, Gus T, too. Okay. Now, when we get on the other side of this, and it ain't no black males nowhere, and you say something about this, and oh my God, you're caping for black males. Come on. Come on. We got to do when really, real talk, forget it. Everybody hates Leroy. Okay, no problem. At minimum, if it's going to be all that about we got these oppressive black males and yum, we can't be cutting no slack to white people. I mean, really. Leroy is on the plantation. Slavery by Another Name. That ain't no book that's got no whole lot of black females in it, man. Douglas Blackness was a guest on that broadcast. That's black dudes, man. Those vagrants, that's black misandry, really. I'm sure they arrested some black females in there here and there, but I mean, that is super duper about getting cheap, delectable niggas, black dudes. Sexual abuse component of that, too. And I've seen that. We've read that a bunch. Texas Tough, Robert Perkinson, that's the same book. Texas, he was a guest on the program. Matter of fact, he was a guest on the program the same year, 2010, summertime, what we've been doing for 16 plus years. And he said the same thing is black dudes, and you see the sexual abuse, same thing that's in Douglas Blackman's book. Incidentally, both of those books are written by white men, experts on racism. Anyway, white men and white women. Anyway. But yeah, like, it cannot be that somehow Leroy is an oppressor in all this. Leroy, Tamir, Trayvon, Floyd, Gus T, Dr. King. Yep, oppressive black males, all of them. Come on now. Come on now. And the white people are privileged. Come on now. That's the type of thing I'm saying. Like, come on now. And now the white LGBTQ people are like, come on now. Come on now. I do not think white LGBTQ people are oppressed, marginalized. I wouldn't care what Justice Clarence Thomas and his cohorts decide tomorrow, next week, next year. If you are classified as white, it will be all right. At worst, you will get the Matthew Shepard treatment. Come out and say, hey, he's a victim. Whole thing. What? Says, what? You homophobe, toxic black dude. Shut up. Put some respect on Matthew Shepard's name. I don't think he was no victim. Shut up, shut up, shut up, you Negro homo. That's another thing, too. Don't you come in my face talking about no, you got to be with us and band with your LGBTQ brothers. You sit around and say that black people are the most homophobic people in the world, and not just the African Americans. You said this about black people all over the world. Ooh, the niggers in Uganda. Ooh, they're just homophobic. Ooh, the Nigerians and ooh, the Caribbeans. Ooh, they say that all over the world. And then you got white people right here will sit here and do all this and change laws and all that. If that's the case, I don't want to hear nothing about no Negro homophobes. And matter of fact, black people aren't in position to change no laws here in the U.S. So I mean, really, once you start all that nonsense about the most homophobic, that too, start with white people, because they go and start changing laws and such. Go and get cases at the Supreme Court and all that. That's not black people. Any hoodles. Again, now say, hopefully I was not uncouth. You can let me know, email, or you can dial in before we wrap up and just be quick. Say, Gus, I thought you were uncouth. You could have been better and behaved yourself, because I thought I did have a lot of respect for Dr. Flowers. I've learned so much from her work, but just, man, I talk about black misandry all the time. I got black male oppressors. we're trying to be patriot. What? The March and real talk, the March on Washington is really old and moldy. You should have, since this book is about 21st century events, you should at least have something in the last 30 years of black males being oppressors. What would that be? My brother's keeper, that was Obeezy's policy. Million Man March. I don't even know what else it would be. You'd have to tell me something. But again, from the lamest, brokest group in the galaxy, what are they going to do? Make a rap song about you? My Negro males. Anyway, the Wu-Tang, they're doing their farewell tour. We miss you, ODB. Make sure we didn't miss any. Folks, to have commentary to share before we wrap up. Again, you can let me know if it's going to be quick. If Gus T was incorrect, rude, and I'd prefer, always enjoy having white guests on. That way, if I do get rowdy, no problem, but certainly was no intention of being discourteous or rude or interrupting or anything nasty, because I did learn quite a bit from the book. Just wanted to make sure that I pointed out that about the Negro male oppression, and even, you know, the white friends and white women and white LGBTQ, because the conflation and conflation. I do not think white gay people or white women, and on Fannie Lou Hamer, I do not think there's any evidence Hillary Clinton and her ilk stepping up. We are going to do right and link arms with our black sisters, our non-white sisters. We will share our IVF resources and other goodies, get this here problem solved, and we're going to make these white men do right. Get out of here. I ain't seen no evidence of that at all. Governor Kathy Hochul, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who are you talking about? I ain't seen no evidence of that at all. Anyway, let's see. Retired firefighter in Florida. We got another toxic black dude. Did you have commentary from what you heard, Dr. Flowers? Making sure Gus behaved himself as well, reasonably?
Well, you know, I think you take the position that you are your worst critic, and that's probably why you were asking the question. And I'll say that you were polite and businesslike with the guest, and I mean, I could actually, you know, tell that. I did think, though, when she kept talking about homosexuals and that was going to be the subject matter for a little while at least, but it was somewhat, but not as much as the situation that she brings up about quote unquote black males oppressing black females. That's not even logical. Although I do hear it from a lot of black females other than your guests, but it's not logical at all.
What I would expect from a toxic black male. Much obliged, retired firefighter in Florida, hopefully on business, because that's, you know, the goal, be on business, not to be discourteous or even to prove a point, because that's not the goal. Replace white supremacy with justice and hopefully be logical. And I think I even said that when I was, asking her some of the questions about the alleged black male oppression of black females. Let's just follow logic and use evidence. And I cannot say enough. It might have been that I was not speaking up, or she didn't hear me, or lost in translation, but this is not new. Okay, in terms of black males not graduating school and school to prison pipeline and all of that, and even college level HBCUs, black females grossly outnumbering black males. This did not start 10 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Again, the great Dr. Tommy J. Curry. This has been how white people have ran the plantation for a long, long time. We do not educate black males, period. That is a massive point, because even that's when I can put dates on. When she was saying, I'm talking about a time period in the 40s, 50s, and 60s when black people thought this way. I'm talking white people thought this way, meaning white people think we're not educating nigger males, nigger boys. We don't educate them. White people have thought this way forever, decades before the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, and you see the evidence decades, a half century before the 1960s, 50s, and 40s. That's what I'm saying. So, and I've seen that pattern where sometimes we will attribute patterns and decision making to black people when, no, man, the usual suspects are almost always to blame. And I mean almost always to blame, directly, indirectly, even times when you don't want it to be so. Nah, man, this is not no decision that black people made. This is white people. Matter of fact, I can give you worldwide. We were talking about Caribbean food being spicy. They have a lot of Caribbean people here, Seattle area, Caribbean restaurants and that sort of thing, Jamaican, Trinidadian. And we were talking, and they said they didn't really have famines, lack of food in these regions, frequently at least, until our friend showed up. And they said one of the responses, some of the food that they have in these regions is really spicy, reputation for being spicy. They said some of that is a response to racism. That's how you respond when you have a lack of food. Make it really hot so people won't be able to eat as much, or at least you won't eat it as quickly. I said, wow. Wow, I'm sitting up thinking that we just love these chili flakes. You know, we love some habanero. No, man. Usual suspects to blame, even in terms of your cuisine. How we get down in a culinary sense. That's not soul food. We eat chitlins because of the system of white supremacy, racism. Our friend, again. Just trying to follow logic, evidence. Get this here problem solved immediately. But that one is near and dear to my heart because that imbalance has been there for such a long time. And again, that would be one that I would point out. Now, if it was black male oppression and we set up a system that said, hey, black females, get out of here. School is for alpha, the black man, yes, and the black man, and the black king, and the African, and the American descendant of slave men. This is our terrain. We're going to go and we're going to be academic scholars. If that were the case, I'd say, oh, okay, man, that's not what you have at all. Not even close. And again, I'm not even saying that black females are to blame for that. Nope. I said usual suspects are to blame. White people say we don't educate black dudes. And that's what you see now. That's what you saw 100 years ago. I say same thing I said while she was here. It's hard to set up a system of oppression against somebody who has more education and money than you. Even if it was just one of those, like, wee, that's going to be hard. Both? We're out-financed and we're kind of stupid in comparison. Come on. We should befriend them. Like, why are we trying to oppress? We should be friends with them. Maybe they can give us a sandwich. You loan me $5? Let me drive your car. Anyway, I will say, incidentally, I think I did hear it said, VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualified, lots of respect for Dr. Flowers. There's one worthless Negro here, right here, Gus T. But I did hear it said that sometimes the black males are pumped up. I guess people say nice things about them, but that is not returned. Oh my God. Oh my God. I don't know who she was referencing. Maybe she, says nice things about black people in her family, the black people that she's around. There's like thousands of miles of distance between where we live at, Dr. Flowers and I, so, she's probably around way different black people than me. But, oh man, I do not hear anybody say constructive things about black males. I could be on a collective level or an individual level. Myself, Barack Obama, Al Sharpton, Diddy, Dave Chappelle, Malcolm Jamal Warner, He's dead now, so they might say that. I mean, now again, it wouldn't surprise me 2-3 days from now, Malcolm Jamal Warner, he raped me, and it would not surprise me. But I don't even know who you're talking about. Pump up black males? Who pumps up? Who? Who? How? When? A song? A poem? A book? Leroy didn't rob me. We miss you, James Burge. I don't even, and it's not, I can only say I think every non-white person, I think it would be best to have zero expectation that any victim of racism will have anything constructive to say about you or non-white people in general. The way that we have been trained, if anything, we will have something constructive to say about our friend, racist man, racist woman, racist child, but you should not have any expectation. If you are not white, especially if you're classified as black, you should have zero expectation that someone classified as black will have something constructive to say about you or black people in general. You are going to heartbreak every 5 minutes, personally and collectively. Sometimes whammy, they'll give you the double whammy at the same time. You heard that insult, they say, oh, you sure is ugly. Woo. I don't want to be around you or 8 people that look like you. Like, dang. Woo. Woo. Negro culture. Anyway, we will assume folks are satisfied, hopefully learned a lot. Book title, again, White Christian Nationalism in the United States, A Rising Tide Sinks All Boats. I do not want folks to forget she started out with white genetic annihilation and saying, hey, what's at the core of all of this? We don't want no gayness and all that. We want more white babies. We don't want no abortion. We want more white babies. We got to control the immigration. Too many dark people here. She said, what's at the root of all of voter suppression? What's at the root of all Dylan Storm, Ruth Payton Ginger? What's at the root of all of this? White genetic annihilation. That I agree with 1,000,000%. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, through and through, something that we should, and Berkeley Fran's white guest we had on the program, she told us as white people become more aware of this and are more upset about this, you can expect more flagrant expressions of white supremacy racism. Tops. Charleston 9. Anyway, we'll be here tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Reading more important than watching television. Sobriety would be best. We need high-functioning brain computers to solve this problem. Creator, help us stop saying, thinking, believing, hoping, wishing. Not all white people are racist. Stop name-calling black people. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. No problem. You're a victim. Man, I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.